Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
President, will you tell Russia not to
Haha, you know, my buddy Vlad over there, you guy. Just about everyone who is in a position to know has been very clear again and again about the fact that Russia is working once again to interfere in our elections.
The Russians are absolutely intent on trying to interfere with our elections.
We assess that foreign actors will view the 2020 U.S. elections as an opportunity to advance their interests. We expect them to refine their capabilities and add new tactics.
They're doing it as we sit here, and they expect to do it during the next campaign. Much more needs to be done in order to protect against this intrusions, not just by the Russians, but others as well.
So what exactly are we doing about it? Well, Congress has passed a few relatively minor bills, and last year it distributed $380 million to help states with election security upgrades, such as strengthening cybersecurity, updating voting equipment, and improving post-election audits. But election security experts generally say that's not nearly enough, and we are still learning just how bad things are. Just last week, one day after Robert Mueller's testimony, a bipartisan Senate report found that Russia targeted election systems in all 50 states back in 2016. Democrats and some Republicans are trying to pass bills to combat the Russian effort. The Democrat-led House passed a bill directing $600 million to help states secure their elections. Lawmakers have put forth legislation requiring campaigns to report offers for help from foreign governments, the FBI, as well as a bill to protect lawmakers from cyber attacks, a bill requiring internet companies to disclose who is buying political ads, and a bill to sanction any entity that attacks a U.S. election, among others. None of these bills are getting a vote in the Senate, and that is thanks to Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who insists the federal government is already doing enough to protect our elections, so none of the legislation is necessary. McConnell's refusal to take up the legislation has earned him the nickname Moscow Mitch from some critics, which has been trending on Twitter, along with permutations like Moscow Mitch McTreason, which is a lot to say. It has also prompted columns like Dana Milbank's blunt "Mitch McConnell is a Russian asset." Yesterday, McConnell took to the Senate floor to whine about being criticized simply because he has repeatedly blocked bills designed to protect our democracy.
I don't normally take the time to respond to critics in the media when they have no clue what they're talking about. But this modern-day McCarthyism is toxic.
Modern-day McCarthyism. Joining me now, Senate veteran Jim Manley, who's chief spokesperson for former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Jim, what did you make of that performance yesterday?
For Senator McConnell, it was a miniature nutty. You know, he rarely, if ever, gets that dramatic and/or gets that ramped up. But obviously, he's feeling the effects of something. Something's going on, and I think that's that he's getting really uncomfortable with where the president's trying to take this whole debate.
Wait, say that again.
A couple different things. First of all, I think he's really uncomfortable with where the president, what the president's doing here. He thinks that something should be done, but as long as the president isn't for it, Senator McConnell is never going to go for it. Why? Because he's afraid of the president. He's up for election in 2020, and the last thing he wants is a primary.
Right, and so I see. So he doesn't want to jam the president on this. So he's blocking it to protect the White House, but he's feeling upset and hurt and frustrated and vulnerable, which is why he took to the floor to whine, because he's being squeezed, essentially.
Exactly. And like I said, he's smart enough to know that, there's an idea out there with the American people that something's got to be done to deal with this Russian stuff. The president can sit in the Oval Office all he wants and rail against these investigations and, deny that anything happened. But the reality is much different, and McConnell knows it. And here he's acting no better, no worse than a lowly House Republican freshman whose only goal in life is to avoid getting a primary by not upsetting the president.
We should note also that he's got a history here of protecting Trump on this front. Back in 2016, there was that meeting that has been widely reported, and Joe Biden talked about this recently, that he refused to sign on to a bipartisan statement about Russian interference. He was the sort of lone objector when the White House wanted to come out and say, look, they're doing this, and we know they're doing it, and we don't want this to be a partisan thing. And he said, I will view it as partisan, and he questioned the intelligence. And that was hugely helpful to Donald Trump.
It was. And so, again, I'll try it one more time. I mean, he just wants to go about confirming his nominations as he works to try and get reelected.
Right.
Now he's getting jammed. He's got to have to deal with the real issue, and he doesn't like it. And he lashed out yesterday, the likes of which I have never seen by McConnell. He is being put in this position. He knows it's wrong, and so all he can do is lash out at his critics by that outrageous suggestion of McCarthyite tactics.
There's also something else that he now has to do, and I think this is pretty interesting. So you got John Ratcliffe, who's just been nominated by the president. I don't actually know if he's been formally nominated, to be honest. Sometimes they say they nominate people and they don't actually nominate them.
He has not, no.
No. So he's been tweet nominated by the president. Whether he will be nominated is another thing. This is a member of the House Intelligence Committee who served on that committee for just a few months, has no real national security experience other than having clearance as a U.S. attorney. This is what the president said about him today, which I don't think is going to help his case over in the Senate. Take a listen.
I think that John Ratcliffe is going to do an incredible job if he gets approved. He's got to get approved, but I think he'll do a great job. I hope he gets approved. I think we need somebody like that there. We need somebody strong that can really rein it in because, as I think you've all learned, the intelligence agencies have run amok. They've run amok.
I just think, I mean, am I wrong to read the president being like, I need this guy to rein them in because they're run amok is not the best way to count to 50 votes over in the Senate to get this guy confirmed?
Yeah, I mean, my rough calculation is that probably get you 10 Republican votes in the Senate Republican caucus because they hate the intelligence agencies so much. But for an awful lot of these folks, they're going to be really upset if forced to vote on this guy because he's obviously highly unqualified, A, for the position, and B, they like to pretend that they like to say, that they are defenders of the intelligence agencies. And they know damn well what's going on here, that Trump's trying to get protection by getting this guy confirmed.
The Richard Burr quote on this I thought was amazing. This is Burr, who's, of course, the chair of Senate Intelligence, doing his best Mariah Carey impersonation. He says, I don't know John Ratcliffe. I look forward to getting to know him. And if I get an official nomination, I'll process it through committee, which to me is such a tell because that's what the Republican senators always say when someone gets floated, if it's Herman Cain or if it's Ken Cuccinelli for a Senate confirmed position that they don't want to confirm. They always say, if they're confirmed.
Yep. And, that for me was the quote that stuck out as well. Having said that, I'm not so sure that Senator Burr is exactly a profile in courage. But, again, all the signs show that this guy is tanking fast. And, I seriously question whether he's going to be able to survive over the next couple of weeks once the Senate goes into recess.
This will be really interesting to watch. Jim Manley, as always, thank you for sharing your insight and experience.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.